Forget everything you think you know about Mary, Queen of Scots' death. This wasn't just a queen losing her crown. It was the slow, deliberate crushing of a woman caught in a centuries-old power struggle, where religion, succession, and betrayal intertwined in ways that still echo today. Mary was born a queen, raised in a royal court, and destined for greatness. But her fate wasn't sealed on the battlefield or by a failed policy. It was sealed in shadows, in secret plots, forged letters, whispered conspiracies, and the growing paranoia of a childless English monarch desperate to hold on to power. What made Mary dangerous wasn't just her bloodline, it was what she represented. To Catholic Europe, to Protestant England, and to the fearful court of Elizabeth I. And if you think her death was simply a matter of treason, think again. This is the real story, not of how Mary died, but why she had to. Mary Stuart entered the world in 1542 under a shadow. Her father, King James V of Scotland, died when she was just 6 days old. From the moment of her birth, she was both queen and pawn. To protect her from political enemies and English ambitions, Mary was sent to the French court as a child. There, she was raised not just as a royal, but as the future queen consort of France. Educated, elegant, fluent in multiple languages, Mary was the embodiment of Catholic royalty, regal, intelligent, and dangerous to her Protestant rivals. When her young French husband, King Francis II, died suddenly, she returned to Scotland at 18. A Catholic queen in a land torn by Protestant Reformation. From the beginning, her rule was a tightrope walk, one where every step would take her closer to either glory or destruction. Mary's return to Scotland was met with fanfare and fury. She was young, beautiful, and Catholic, ruling a kingdom now dominated by Protestant lords who eyed her with deep suspicion. Still, Mary tried to walk the line, showing tolerance for Protestants while maintaining her Catholic faith. But politics in Scotland wasn't about diplomacy, it was blood and betrayal. Her marriage to her cousin, Lord Darnley, was meant to strengthen her claim to the English throne. Instead, it spiraled into scandal. Darnley was arrogant, jealous, and violent. When he led a group of men into Mary's private chambers and murdered her advisor, David Rizzio, in front of her while she was pregnant, her public image began to crack. Then came Darnley's own death, blown up in the middle of the night, his body found strangled in a nearby garden. Suspicion fell on Mary's inner circle, and soon after, she married the main suspect, James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell. That was the final blow. Her people turned against her. The lords rose up. Mary was forced to abdicate in favor of her infant son, James. She fled across the border, seeking refuge with her cousin, Elizabeth I. She would never see freedom again. Mary arrived in England expecting sanctuary. What she found was a gilded cage. Elizabeth I now had a royal cousin, a Catholic with a strong claim to her throne, within reach. Mary was both guest and prisoner, and Elizabeth knew it. Letting Mary go meant risking rebellion. Executing her meant killing a fellow anointed queen, something unprecedented in English history. Then came the casket letters, a series of scandalous documents allegedly written by Mary to Bothwell, implicating her in Darnley's murder. Were they real? Forged? We still don't know. But they destroyed Mary's reputation across Europe and gave Elizabeth political cover to keep her locked away. For the next 19 years, Mary would be moved from castle to castle, watched, interrogated, isolated. Every move was calculated, every letter read. She was trapped in a political game where her very existence threatened the crown. Elizabeth, meanwhile, stalled. She feared the blowback of executing Mary. But with every year that passed, pressure mounted from her advisors. Mary wasn't fading. She was becoming a symbol, and in the shadows, plots began to stir. Mary was a queen without a crown, but not without power. Though imprisoned, she was never forgotten. To English Catholics, she was the rightful monarch. To Catholic Europe, Spain, France, the Pope, she was a weapon waiting to be unsheathed. Every rebellion, every whisper of dissent in England came with Mary's name on it. Her cousin Elizabeth saw the danger. Mary's claim to the throne was stronger by blood, and her Catholicism made her a rallying point for those who believed England's Protestant queen was a heretic. As long as Mary lived, Elizabeth would never sleep soundly. Still, executing her was no easy matter. Elizabeth's reign depended on legitimacy, and the murder of a fellow queen could unravel it. So Mary remained alive, but watched like a hawk. Her letters were intercepted. Her visitors screened. Her every word a potential threat. But you can only cage a lioness for so long before others begin plotting to set her free or use her for their own ends. The stage was nearly set, and the blood was beginning to boil. The first true crack in the dam came with the Throckmorton plot in 1583, a plan involving Spanish troops, Jesuit agents, and the idea of placing Mary on the English throne. Though Mary's direct involvement couldn't be proven, the plot convinced Elizabeth's inner circle that the threat was real and growing. But it was in 1586 that the hammer truly fell. Enter Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's master of espionage, a man who believed in preemptive strikes and ruthless tactics. When he caught wind of the Babington plot, he saw an opportunity not just to stop a rebellion, but to finally bring Mary down. The plot was bold: assassinate Elizabeth, trigger a Catholic uprising, and place Mary on the throne. What Babington and his co-conspirators didn't know was that Walsingham had already infiltrated the network. Every letter, every secret was intercepted. Mary was baited into replying, and she did in code. Her letter gave approval for the plot to move forward. That was the missing link Walsingham needed. But many historians believe the letter may have been altered, or at least strategically translated, to ensure Mary's guilt was absolute. Either way, the die was cast. Mary, the queen who had once ruled 2 kingdoms, was now ensnared by ink and parchment. Her enemies didn't need swords, they needed signatures. And the moment that sealed her fate came not on the battlefield, but in a hidden chamber under surveillance with coded letters that were never truly private. The executioner's blade was being sharpened, and Mary could hear it. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who appreciates the untold truths of history. Help us keep telling them. Subscribe now and join us on our journey to 1,000 subscribers. Every click helps keep the past alive. Mary was led into a courtroom that had already made up its mind. She wasn't allowed legal counsel. She couldn't review the evidence in full. And despite being a sovereign monarch, she was tried as a subject, a direct assault on royal immunity. The verdict was never in doubt. This was not a trial. It was a sentence waiting to be read. Mary stood tall. In the face of humiliation, betrayal, and inevitable death, she defended herself with the dignity of a queen and the fire of a warrior. She declared her innocence, denied involvement in Babington's plan, and reminded the court that she was no mere noble. She was a queen chosen by God, just as Elizabeth had been. But mercy was no longer on the table. Elizabeth signed the execution order, then tried to deny it. The document was sent anyway. February 8, 1587. Fotheringhay Castle cold stone, candlelight, silence, until the thud of footsteps echoed through the hall. Mary entered dressed in scarlet, the Catholic color of martyrdom. She knelt at the block, forgave her executioner, and whispered prayers in Latin. The first swing missed, the second struck deep, the third finished her. When the executioner held up her head, her wig came off, revealing grey hair. The hall gasped. The myth of the young, dangerous Mary vanished in a breath. Blood soaked the stage. A dog, her companion, had hidden in her skirts and now whimpered in the crimson-stained cloth. Mary died not with a scream, but with resolve, and with her death, a warning was written in blood. In the game of crowns, even queens can bleed. Elizabeth I ruled alone, and ruled without an heir. That fact haunted every decision she made. With no child of her own, the question of succession loomed like a storm on the horizon. And Mary, Queen of Scots, was the answer that terrified her most. Mary's claim to the English throne was legitimate. She was the granddaughter of Margaret Tudor, Henry VIII's sister. To many Catholics, Elizabeth was a bastard, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, a heretic queen. Mary wasn't just a rival. She was, in their eyes, the rightful queen. Every plot, every uprising, every whisper of rebellion had Mary's shadow behind it. She was more than a woman. She was a banner. Elizabeth's advisors knew that as long as Mary lived, England would never be safe. Not from Spain, not from Rome, not from the English people themselves. That's why her execution wasn't personal. It was strategic. Mary died not because she wielded a sword or led an army. She died because of what she symbolized: a Catholic future, a legitimate succession, and a dangerous alternative to Elizabeth's rule. In a kingdom built on uncertain legitimacy, the most dangerous person was the one who could make people believe in something else. And Mary made them believe. Mary died, but her story refused to. In Catholic Europe, she was mourned as a martyr. Statues were erected, masses were held, and poems sung of the innocent queen who met her death with grace and courage. In England, the crown spun a different tale, of justice served, of treason punished, but something deeper took root. Her son, James VI of Scotland, would later become James I of England, uniting the crowns Mary and Elizabeth had once fought over. The irony: Mary's bloodline, the one Elizabeth feared, would sit on the very throne she tried to protect. Mary's image evolved over time. She became the tragic queen in plays, novels, operas, and films, a figure draped in velvet and sorrow, forever misunderstood. For centuries, historians debated her guilt, her motives, and her fate. In 2025, Mary's story still resonates, a cautionary tale about power, perception, and how history punishes women who won't play by the rules. She was used by allies and enemies alike, betrayed by those closest, and remembered as both villain and victim. And while her execution ended her life, it only amplified her legend. She may have died on English soil, but her legacy lives far beyond the block, in the whispers of rebellion, in the questions of legitimacy, and in every tale where truth and power collide. So, what was the real reason Mary, Queen of Scots, died? It wasn't just about treason. It wasn't about one plot or one letter. It was about a threat that couldn't be silenced any other way. Mary represented everything Elizabeth feared: a bloodline stronger than hers, a faith that defied the state, and a symbol powerful enough to ignite rebellion. She didn't die for what she did. She died for what she was: a queen with a claim, a cause, and a following. Her execution was not justice. It was political necessity, a brutal move in a deadly game of thrones, played by monarchs, spies, and shadowy powers across Europe. And that's what makes her story so chillingly relevant today. The idea that perception, fear, and legacy can outweigh truth. But now, we want to hear from you. Was Mary a victim of circumstance, or a threat that had to be stopped? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one.